right. Learn to code. We're doing it. Cool. Streaming live on YouTube, and y'all are a part of it. Uh, I will put that link in here if anyone's having technical difficulties. I read the comments in the YouTube too, so um, I I implore you to go in the YouTube too. Or don't. I don't know. Maybe that's too confusing if you're already in campus. I am going to share my screen. It's Monday. Everyone's feeling good. Are we having a Garfield day today? Are we waking up? Are we ready to learn to code? Are we ready to code even? Yes, no. Um, Feel free to mic up when I ask questions. Uh, or just post in the box too. You're still waking up. Still waking up. Stream is live. Cool. Stream's live, and people are waking up. People are feeling good. What is behind me? Somebody says Guten Tag in the YouTube chat. I didn't know. We had Germans. That's cool. Anyways, so what is behind me is the code that we worked on last week. I want to use this as like a jumping off point to get people excited about what we can do as a class. We built a website. This website's live. It's resource.support. Resource spelt like this dot support. Research.support. We did all the things. We connected it to hosting. We connected it to actual domain, and it functions. And people can search for different zip codes, and they see the resources for that zip code. Users can add resources, right? Uh, Developers, you have helped to build this thing. And in the About page, we can see all the contributors and collaborators, a little badge that said built and maintained by the Multiverse School. This is an active project. It's out there now. We have to maintain it, right? Or we can just let it become more internet slop. That's the domain is up in a year. Maybe I see that I want to host something else through that Vercel account, and I pull the repo. But for the most part, this thing needs to be maintained. I've had some people DM me, especially about this last week's project, because towards the latter classes, Wednesday, Thursday, we hit these points where we were getting a little bit complex with what we were doing. Maybe a little tech supporty, even just like setting up the website in the GUI. And so I had people kind of DM me, a couple people DM me, why do I feel so behind? Like, what am I supposed to be looking at to get myself up and running with this Learn to Code class? I feel like other people are light years ahead of me in this Learn to Code class. And if you feel behind when you're learning to code, you're doing it right. You're doing it right. There's so much knowledge out there. I feel behind. I feel behind when I'm learning to code. So this could be a commentary on my ability to teach code, which sometimes is lackluster. I'm more so into teaching y'all how to ship and deploy applications, right? Because I feel like that is the importance of learning to code at the moment. And so I kind of wanted to take this class. It's Monday. We can either decide on a group project that we're building this week, or do the sort of like piecemeal, we're working on our personal projects and we pick and pull features from personal projects that we're working on and kind of dissect them as a class. I'll let y'all decide with some structure behind it. But I wanted to talk about uh, the kind of framework that I think is important for orienting uh, all skill levels, beginners to more advanced coders, about how this real software work actually happens. Because resource.support is real software. This exists now on the internet. Anyone can interact with this. I posted it to my LinkedIn and people started using it, right? People are in the GitHub commenting about different issues. Oh, this NYC zip code doesn't work. So I now, as devs, we can go and check. Wow, this New York zip code doesn't work. That's weird. Um, the Seattle zip code doesn't work. As devs, we can go in. Seattle does work. All right. So now we're getting like sort of like a non-deterministic view of what this application does, but we're working on it as a team. We're maintaining it as a team. That's what excites me about working on projects like this together, is now all of a sudden, seemingly the student, the member of the Learn to Code class is now helping maintain the project that we built as a group, and that I think is awesome, right? um but I wanted to kind of break things down in a way that's simple, of and I wanted to get this sort of like inspiring juices flowing, because I always talk about sort of working on your personal projects, and the importance of working on personal projects in this class to kind of get people started with learning to code. But I never dive too deep into those personal projects, and I feel like it's sort of this like chicken or egg situation that I keep hitting, where I'm like, oh, what are y'all working on? What are you coding personally? And it's hard to conjure that share out of people if maybe you don't have a personal project, or maybe you came to this class to learn to code so that you can work on a personal project. But with that being said, I want to sort of uh like the chicken or egg situation. In this situation, the I, yeah, I mean, I guess like I don't know which is the chicken or which is the egg. Let's call the egg your personal project, and the chicken is your coding skill, right? Um, the egg comes first in this situation. I mean, I guess we can't answer this question. Never mind. That's a bad analogy. Screw the chicken and egg situation. But you need to have a personal project. Come to this class with a personal project in mind. It is going to help you learn to code so much better than coming to class with the idea that you need to learn to code before you even contemplate what projects you can build, right? That's why when you're learning math, they have you like add apples and oranges and bananas and stuff, because like you need to be given this example of the basics of what you can do. You could go grocery shopping. You can figure out how much your groceries cost, or how much pepperonis are on a pizza or whatever. All right. So the framework that I think is helpful for orienting everybody within the projects they're working on. I kind of built this out. It's who. Let's make this big. Um, and this is VS Code. I'm working in VS Code. Who, what, where, when, why, how. Maybe wait. It's who, what, when, who, what, when, where, why, how. We're going back to basics here. We're going back to, we're in kindergarten learning to write, right? So who, what, where, when, why, how. Uh so we're thinking about our personal projects right now. Keep your personal project in your mind. You know, Monday meaning Monday meditation. Think about something that you're either actively working on right now or that you want to work on with code, and hold that for a second in your mind. So who, right? Who builds these projects? People. You do. This answer is really simple. We exist to code. You build the application, uh, is is uh, falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, doesn't make a sound. I don't know. It's you. There needs to be a you behind the project, right? Um, you right now, like that's who builds the project. So in practice, the reason why we see like resource dot support that actually went up. It's a site, and it works, and people liked it on LinkedIn, and people are using it, and people are maintaining the GitHub repo now. Because rarely in practice are projects solo, right? Are they like solo dev? Even small ones, right? They kind of implicitly involve you as a builder and then users of that project, right? So we get in this mind space of like, oh, I'm solo deving the thing, so it's just me working on it. Uh, I think it's kind of important to start thinking about your users, the audience of your project, as active parts of that project, right? And then, we talked today earlier in job stand up about kind of emotional dysregulation and AI kind of doing this back and forth emotional homeostasis, so that when you're using AI as an assistant, as you become more irate or frustrated with the outcome that you're getting, sometimes that outcome becomes worse if you're vibe coding or if you're using Claude or Chat GPT. The frameworks, the APIs that we use when we're coding as well, those tools uh, are also kind of collaborators on what we're building. And then thinking about resource dot support, when we build something, who builds projects? Who's going to maintain the project when it goes up and it's working? So you have you to think of, you have the users, you have the tools that you're using, which may be AI, they may be APIs or other frameworks written by other coders. And then you have this future you that is maintaining the project, right? So learning to code, less about mastering the syntax right now, right? It's more about coordinating who is working on your project, who is coding your project. So you got users, you got tools, you got future you. And you always want to hook your future self up, right? You want to hook your future self up because with code, I have definitely left problems for my future self, and it just bums me out so much. So think about your personal projects right now. We're holding that in your mind. Um, and I want you to feel free to share, whether in the box, in the chat room, or on mic. Um, when you have a personal project in mind, if you have a personal project in mind, if you don't, that's fine too. Who are you building your project for? And feel free to mic up or post it in the box. Who are you building your project for? Person in the chat says most of my projects are self-management or for community, like resource. Yes. Yeah, I think that that's fair. When we build tools for ourselves, um I think that we get stuck in this place of like, all right, this is a tool that I'm going to use locally that only I'm going to see. It's going to be hyper personalized. Um, but it's important to think about when you're building personal tools, how others could use that tool. So if it is a self-management tool, everyone needs self-management, right? Uh, we are all collectively self-managing, you know, nuanced and unique selves, but still, I think that uh, so I do this thing every year where like I audit myself based off of like different tasks, how many miles I ran in a week, or if I've been eating right, or if I've been focusing on my art projects. And it used to just be this like Excel sheet that only I had access to. And then this year I wanted to kind of gamify it and turn it into a um like a weird spiraling mountain that a 3D version of me is climbing up. Um, and so I built this website that is, for all intents and purposes, a self development tool, but oh wow, now I'm underground. It's buggy as hell, but it gives access to other users if they wanted to use the same self-management tool, right? So I give myself quests that I have to complete. Uh, this is like, if I don't smoke weed, I get a point. If I clean my fish tank, I get a point. And then I have other things that I have to do within the day. But my self-management tool is now something that if other users wanted to make accounts, they could uh, kind of take part in this dynamic process of me building my self-management tool. They're not going to have the same quests as I do, not everybody um, does the same things. They can make their own quests, right? But thinking about kind of your self-management tools are things that you use even to like organize your own life, how those could possibly benefit other people. It all is a community resource, right? So um that's kind of like leads to my next point, right? We're thinking about who would use our project if like who uses our project, right? Somebody's walking their dog. That's cool. I love walking dog and listening to listening. This could be a podcast, but like it's interactive. I don't want y'all to tune out. I want you to like really hold your projects in your head right now and think about what you're working on. Um, this is I just showed a project that I've been working on for my self management. That's it's not important. It is a website, but it's like we had somebody in the chat say most of my projects are self management or for community, and I wanted to point towards when we're thinking about the who that we build our project for, that you can build self-management tools for other people as well. So the thing that benefits you can very likely benefit a community of people. If it's beneficial to you, it's probably beneficial to other people, right? So that's something to think about when you're thinking about the who is if no one used your project, would you still build it, right? So if no one used your project, would you still build it? Right? If and that's the thing, is a lot of the times with these self-management tools, if nobody used your project, you would still build it, right? Because that's you're building it for your self-management. But when we start building a project with users in mind, and your answer to if no one used your project, would you still build it, is no, that kind of is a red flag, right? You should be enthusiastic about building this thing if 0 people show up to use it, because the reality of the situation with the now near hundreds of apps that I've built is that a majority of them, I would say 95%, don't even reach 5 users. I can't even convince my family to use these applications, right? And that's not a testament to my own pathetic nature as a developer. That's more so the reality of just like art and creativity. It's like, oh, I built this cool thing. I love it. It's so great. It's my aesthetic. It's who I am. Other people should want it too, right? And so people are doing their own thing, or maybe you over engineered it and it doesn't feel, it's not convenient for other people to interact with, or maybe it's behind a paywall and other people don't want to pay for it, right? That's not so much a reflection of you. It is a critique on your project, but it's something to think about. If no one used your project, would you still build it? um you should want to build the things that you should want to still build it if no one used it, because the reality of the situation is most people, like, most projects don't reach that, like, critical mass of users that a project's maintenance necessitates, right? So and then something uh that's important to kind of think about is what role are you playing within the project, right? So this is still the who, right? What role are you playing? Um, Builder, designer, problem solver. These are all things to think about when you're building your application. So if anybody wants to answer not this last question but the one before it, feel free to mic up or go in the chat. If no one used your project, would you still build it? If no one used your project, would you still build it? Yes, no, maybe so. All right, heck yeah, I'd still build it. We want that. We want to conjure that somebody says yes. Usually, I build it because I want to see the idea through, maybe to solve a problem, but really to get the idea out of my head. All great reasons, right? Um, uh, yeah. So it's about sort of like, you're not going to build a project that you're not enthusiastic about. You might start a project that you're not enthusiastic about. When we think about coding, I feel like we hit this like hyper left brain sort of reality where it's like, I am a coder, I am a hacker, I am a robot, I need to make the thing rational and logical, and I need to do it as efficiently as possible. I need to learn the most, like, the like economic syntax to make the thing work. We need to compress everything and make it work as quickly as possible. And it's just like, uh that sort of mindset gets us into this place of starting projects that we don't want to do. You look at like a list of sort of toy projects to build, to learn to code, and you pick the most boring one or the most mathematical one because you feel like that's going to make you a better coder, to like drudge through the uh the tough sort of like mathy, logic oriented project. So like, while you're building a calculator and getting like hung up on all the functions and just the minutia of of how to write that code, your buddy who's developing the game that the strategy game that they've wanted to make since they were a kid playing Warcraft, is like halfway through their project, and you're like struggling with essentially you know, a project that people do in their first week of boot camp because you chose the thing that doesn't interest you, that doesn't elicit any sort of fun from you, right? So, who? You're building this thing for you. You know, you want to have fun with it. If no one used your project, would you still build it? You should answer yes to that because you want to build this thing. If you like those sort of math problems, if you like the Sudoku, you know, that's another thing that gets people going. Sometimes they're like, I don't understand how this thing works, and my curiosity is going to carry me through this project. My competitivity, my need to figure out the answer to this question is going to carry me through the project. Those are totally okay values to target when you're thinking about who builds the project, because you build the project, right? I'm trying not to be super cheesy with this, but it's definitely going down that rabbit hole. We were getting cheesy, and I spelled solver wrong. Problem solver. Solver. Um, so the next question: What are you actually building? What are you actually building? You think you're building apps, right? Applications, apps. It's so vague. It's so vague, right? Um, we talked about this like one of the first weeks that I was running this learn to code class. Um, uh, you are building systems that transform inputs into outputs for a specific purpose. You are building systems that transform inputs into outputs for a specific purpose. Specificity is so important when we're thinking about coding, when we're thinking about life, when you're thinking about your goals, when you're thinking about anything. You got to get objective with what you are building. When you are just building an app that, does what an application does, uh, I want to build an app all right, I feel like we got stuck in this sort of like what rabbit hole when we built the executive dysfunction app, right? Because what is executive dysfunction, right? Uh okay, my camera's being a little is are people getting that lag? Yeah, maybe a little bit of lag on my camera. I'm moving around too much. You're building systems that transform inputs into outputs for a specific purpose, right? Um, I hear the chat going. It just roboted for a second. I'm back. I'm back. It's the campus is always a buggy situation. Um, Inputs and outputs. You are the transmitter. You are the receiver. We're thinking about our users. What sort of input are they putting into the thing, right? So we got caught in this sort of like dilemma of not knowing what we were building when we were building Pedro, which was our executive dysfunction app. Let's see if I can pull that up. Uh, so Pedro, our executive dysfunction app. Uh, let's see. Oh, now it's just like gigantic. All right, so our executive dysfunction app. Executive dysfunction is a big thing. We can get so vague with it. This is like the sort of to-do list application is also another like calculator application that you see a lot of the times when you're in like learn to code classes, boot camps, right? The to-do list. It's not a great sort of uh like it's a good showcase of what code can do. You can pull open the code for this and look at it and be like, "Oh, that's a function. That's an array. That's a list." You know. but there's also like you kind of miss the point of building specificity into your coding practice, right? Um, Nothing wrong with Pedro. I basically just pulled this open so we can look at the raccoon gif. But beyond that, you're building systems that transform inputs into outputs for a specific purpose. So resource, input, zip code, output, local resources. That was the resource project, right? We had a YouTube re-rank project where you inputted your YouTube feed and it outputted a re-ranked feed. We didn't really get it to work, but that's what it was supposed to do, right? Um, we used to do this sort of voting application, the ranked choice voting for what project we were going to do. The input would be the user's votes. The output would be the ranked result, right? So, uh, roboted for a second again there. What is the input of your personal project? Can anybody answer this? Feel free to mic up or go in the chat. What is the input of your personal project? And there's no wrong answers here. I know I'm sounding like very teacherly. What is the input of your personal project? All right, this person says groceries info. Cool. Groceries info. Groceries info? Like for your grocery scraper, right? All right. So you are scraping groceries. So this is where we have to like sort of think about input and output and what is the specific purpose, right? So groceries info is the input. The output is organized grocery info. For what purpose, right? I feel like we're putting the horse before the cart in a way right there. Because the input may be a user puts in a grocery that they want. It goes through your application, which has scraped the grocery info, and then it provides them an output of XYZ grocery that they should buy, right? So So it scrapes different sites for your grocery list and returns which ones have it cheapest. All right, so this is where we go into the sort of the specificity of what we're building, right? So this is a great example. All right. So in your head, what you're building is a grocery scraper, but that's not actually what you're building. You're building a grocery lookup for the user, right? The user is what's happening. You will build a grocery scraper that lives within this application, but you're actually building a grocery lookup. So the input is not the grocery info, it's the item or the item list of the user, right? So user grocery item list, right? And then the output is the cheap, like the optimized grocery list based off scraped info, right? Uh, so again, like just ways to think about sort of systems thinking, design thinking. This is like practical stuff that we need to know when we're learning to code, because my head does that too. When I'm building a grocery scraper, I'm like, the input is grocery information, right? But even to build a grocery scraper, the input's not grocery information. the input is links to grocery sites or places that store groceries, right? And then you need to scrape those sites, right? Um multiple different inputs. And this is something that happens too when we're working on projects is we get like uh kind of caught up in the project within the project, right? Because the real project is the grocery lookup, the real application is the grocery lookup. um but we are caught on the grocery scraper, which is important because scraping that information is going to come in handy for actually building the project. To put this into actual like application um, uh, reference, right? So we built this resource application last week. You have you look up a zip code, it pulls up this information, right? The input for this application is a zip code. The output is the resources. But last week we built the scraping mechanism, or we got Claude to exhaustively research all of these resources, right? And then Claude threw them into uh these JSONs that became the data that then becomes the output for the user. So let's see if we can find that. Lib.
Nick, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is there uh like technique or uh like a way to prioritize which like input we should, or a way to see which input we should prioritize on to make an MVP and expand from there
Yeah. Yeah.
instead?
I mean, I think it's sort of like the simple problem statement of your project, right? So the input output, think of it like the thesis of your project. User comes with this information, you do something to that information, and then you provide the output. So it really like if you can't come up with that statement, then you have to kind of go back to the drawing board of ideation of what your project is, right? Do you have a project in mind? Maybe we could sort of like brain dump what the input may be for that project.
Oh, I have so many projects that I'm like doing, but my issue is that I start like with a project, and then I start adding on things, and I can't really decide which way to go on, and I can't like, I go like blank on, but I need this, and this would also be like, for example, I'm working on like a project tracker that that's a VS Code plugin that keeps track of like, okay, what happens to me is that I start a project A, I then get dispersed, start project B, then project C, I forget what I'm doing. Eventually, I start project D, which is project A. So, um, the idea is to have a tracker that keeps everything like memory updated of where I'm at every project. And if I'm going to start project D, which I have already started in project A, like it tells me like, hey, you already started project A. Why don't you continue here? And this is where you are right now.
Cool. Yeah, I think so. So when we're thinking about inputs and outputs, so going back to this sort of, you are building systems that transform inputs into outputs for a specific purpose, right? We are human. I'm super neurodivergent and easily distractible. ADD, like, will when I'm working on a project, I want to work on like 900 different things within that project, right? So going back to the specificity angle, building systems that transform inputs into outputs for a specific purpose. You're building this project tracker. There's so many different sort of like circuitous paths that branch off of what you're doing, that are going to be more fun than like just like focusing on what the thing is, right? But the
Hmm.
input is very basic. The input's going to be your project description and then progress on that project, right?
Hmm.
So it might help to actually think about what changes in the world after somebody uses your application, right? What sort of like that is the application, right? With the grocery lookup, right? The person puts in a grocery list and they're given an optimized grocery list with actually like where they should purchase these things. The cheapest or the most efficient way to get their groceries. That makes that person a more efficient consumer, right? That's what
Yeah.
changes in the world, right? The project tracker, what changes in the world is now a person who may have so many projects moving around has a more organized, optimized sort of sense of what projects they should get done, what projects they should work on, where their focus should go. The reality of the situation is, I don't know, like how many of you are working. I don't know what y'all's sleep schedules are like, but the reality of the situation is that we have maybe about 60 to 70 hours a week that we can actually work on, build our projects, do our things, right? So something like this project tracker is basically looking at uh, the amount of time people have, which is dwindling, right? Like we need to effectively use our time. The amount of projects that people work on, and then giving them an output that is what they should be working on. Just like a reminder, right? So uh, it's hard. It's hard, right? It's also somewhat simple. I think we get caught in this like mindset of like wanting to build the application that reminds us to work on the application that helps us become a better coder to make the application, right? And the what of the question is you gotta just build it, you gotta finish it, you gotta ship it, you gotta deploy it, you gotta get it out the door. If we're getting like super hung up on the minutia of these projects, then this can kind of be our Achilles heel as creative coders is the projects never get finished. I know in this class we probably have computers that are full of dead projects, graveyards of half finished projects that we instantiated the repo and it didn't really fruition into anything, right? And so this is more so getting the juices flowing and kind of like leading us to a place where we start thinking about our personal projects with a sense of excitement, like what would you actually want to finish and see through, right? um I will say, you with a project like a project tracker, sometimes these projects can be a little bit of like meta cognitive black holes, right? When we work on the projects to organize the project, when we work on the executive function apps, when we work on the self-management apps, we never really have this point where the application uh, is good because we're constantly trying to it becomes sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy or like a weird feedback loop where you're like, I'm building the project tracker, but the project tracker also needs to be somewhere within the project tracker. um, I'm building the self development app, but somewhere in the self development app also needs to be the me building the self development app, right? And so knowing that I've been down that spiral many times, and sometimes it works out. Sometimes it works out. If it's fun for you, do it. If it's not fun for you, find something else to do until it's fun again, I guess.
Yeah, no, I'm setting strict boundaries on like market gaps to not expand too much on that.
Yeah, for sure. So that leads us to sort of our next W, when. When do you build? What right now, I think with a learn to code class, the question is really like, when do you build versus when do you learn, right? This is a question that I feel like I don't answer super well for y'all, and I wanted to. When do you build? And I wanted to answer that. I wanted to approach it right now. When do you build versus when do you learn? Um, so most people put off building the thing because we get caught up in this like world where we're like, we need knowledge first. Like again, this sort of like coder's dilemma of like being way too left brained and being like, I need to know everything about everything before I build the app about everything, right? um and it's like, the actual cycle when you have built something and when you're building things and shipping things is that you try to build it, you get stuck, it breaks, you go and learn exactly what needs to be fixed, and then you continue building, right? This sort of just in time learning, right? So when we go on the internet and we're on YouTube or we're talking to Chat GPT or Claude, um, if you're only like consuming tutorial information, you're gonna be in this sort of passive loop, right? Uh, Working on your personal projects, working on our group projects, that forces this active problem solving, right? Um, and there are great code tutorials out there on YouTube. Don't get me wrong. But when you don't have an application in mind to apply that knowledge, you're you're already stuck, right? That not to say that just like digging into like reading materials about how to code and watching coding tutorials is a waste of time. Um, but if you're using that process as a way to delay building the project that you should be building, you need to get off of that trip, right? So yeah, this is something I kind of wanted to open up to the class. If you have been building things, uh, what what did you get stuck on? What was the last thing you got stuck on? Does anybody remember? Can anyone recall? Feel free to mic up. Feel free to post in the chats.
I'm currently stuck in something.
Awesome. What is it? What are you stuck on?
Yeah, on the open source Claude. When you I run out of tokens super fast. So when I don't have any more tokens, I decided I'm gonna try and use the Claude code and see if I can use that. So I'm learning by doing, I guess.
Yeah, learning by doing. I mean, that's something that's like a real problem with the when now too of it is when you run out of tokens. I feel like to people that are just starting to code, especially if you are vibe coding or relying on AI as an assistant, when you run out of tokens, puts this kind of like forced end to your learning, right? To the process of building the thing. And we didn't have that. We didn't have that a couple years ago, right? Um, and
I come from a data science background,
yeah,
so I do machine learning, and like for the apps and everything, I never learned how to code for that. So I depend a lot on tokens right now. All of that part.
Yeah, I feel like that kind of goes into uh like the win can also be this thought of as like where we are right now in sort of the the timeline of tech, right? I saw this weird this graph the other day, and forgive me if this is incorrect. But this is Stack Exchange, Stack Overflow, not Stack Overflow usage, Stack uh Overflow traffic over time, right? And
Who saw this?
yeah, you've seen this. It's
Yeah, I've seen this.
so and like you're a scientist, right? Machine learning. So like
Yeah.
go on Stack Overflow. Like go on Stack Overflow when you run out of tokens. We're going
Yeah.
back to 2018. We're going back to, it's
But
we're,
but I don't know if you've noticed that you don't have as much information there anymore, especially for LLMs and like all of the new stuff. Like people just don't post there anymore.
then that is like it therein lies part of the problem of like the problem statement of when we are coding, right? uh when do we build versus when do we learn, right? But also we're going into like the next subject matter, right, the next point, which is where, but not setting up that segue just yet. uh yeah, Stack Stack Overflow has gotten way worse, right? Noticeably worse. I mean, the people on there were always sort of mean to me because I ask questions that I need the answers to, and sometimes those questions are dumb, right? And there is sort of like a resting Stack Overflow text voicing that is rude sometimes. Anyways, that being said,
Yeah,
there's still the right information on there, right? When we get stuck, Google's your friend. Figuring out when we run out of tokens,
yeah.
figuring out ways around that. Asking other people who are working on the project, going into the Matrix chat for the Multiverse school. There's other people who are actively always working on their own projects, their own AI projects, and I think with our sort of like sycophantic AI assistants, we have forgotten that people help people uh, do things. It's rough, but
Oh, Anik,
this
I do want to make a note that if anyone is working also on Cloud Code, they've like erased it. They're trying to like erase it. Like the posts on Reddit are down. If you ask about it on Cloud Code, it doesn't exist anymore. So yeah, just general note. Also, subreddit Stack Overflow is not being helpful with that.
Yeah, interesting. Good to know. So the where comes in handy here. Uh, First off, where does your project live? Where do projects live? Um, Typical stack. Uh, we got your local machine, right? That's dev for most of us. GitHub for version control, hosting. We've used Vercel for our last project. Railway. There's a bunch of hosting providers, and then browser is sort of where people are going to be interacting with most of your applications. Unless you're making like executables or games, we can go down there. So the where of the technical where is answered through that. Understanding where your code runs is as important as understanding what the inputs and outputs are, right? So when we think about this like sort of what statement, you are building systems that transform inputs into outputs for a specific purpose. That is a website, that is a application, that is an iOS application, an Android application, that is a VR game, that is a something that works on uh uh you know smartwatch. There's you need to think about like sort of like where that project is going. It helps to containerize vague ideas, right? um Beyond that, where is your application useful, right? uh what environments, right? Grocery lookup, uh that's useful in the virtual grocery store, but also in a physical grocery store, right? uh the project tracker is useful in people's offices and people's places of work, right? um uh where would you meet users for your application? This might get a little heady, right? But so near my house, they're having this resource block party, right? Where the town commissioners get together and they shut down the street for the day on the weekend, and there's bands and stuff, but people share the community resources that are relevant to the neighborhood. Food banks and free metro and stuff like that. This is a great opportunity for me to print out little QR codes with resource.support on them and pass them out at the resource awareness block party, right? Maybe leave a little thing at your local uh uh DHS. Yeah, not the bad DHS, the good DHS. There's places that you can sort of uh represent your application and find users for your application is what I'm getting at here. Um Also, when we think about that sort of Stack Exchange, Stack Overflow situation, uh, where do you find the knowledge to build this application that you don't have, right? Um, with the grocery lookup, we need to scrape grocery content, right? Where, what websites are we scraping, right? That's a where question. That's a question that's answered from where. um uh what websites, what communities are you sourcing knowledge from? uh are you physically going to a library to research? Are you physically going to um local events to talk to people, to interview people for content for your application, right? Maybe this is an application that does phone calls to your local government or whatever. uh where are you calling? Who are you calling, right? This goes into the who too of it. So just stuff to think about. Uh, and then we get to uh our last two. which are a little bit more existential. Why build projects? Why do anything at all? Why exist, right? Um, I think there's like three solid, there's infinite reasons to build projects, but the reasons that I can think of off the top of my head are uh, skill acquisition. We're getting together to learn to code. I think you really only truly understand something once you've used it in context. And building a project helps you get there, right? The second, your portfolio. Remember that thing that your portfolio. It's good. It's great signaling of competence. A working project, like the people who actually took me up on contributing to the GitHub, now they can point towards this about page on resource.support and be like, look, I built this. You know? Um, this shows competence so much better than a resume, like footnote, right? A functioning website. And then leverage, right? Leverage is important. We're going back to the what, taking inputs, turning them into outputs. We're changing the world, right? Code lets you build tools that do the work for you, right? Um, Projects kind of compress the act of learning, and they kind of put you in this place where you need to confront the reality. You're solving problems. You are a problem solver. That's why we build projects. We don't build projects just to learn. We don't build projects just to exist in the world and create more project, right? We build projects to solve problems, right? We build projects because we all exist in a reality, and there are very real problems that exist in this reality. So, why build the project that you're building specifically, right? What problem does it solve that you actually care about? Would you even use that project yourself? If you can't answer these questions, it's not a good project. It's just not a good project. And I know these are like vague sort of existential questions to ask, but really it's not that esoteric. It is not that existential, right? Like if you cannot answer uh what problem your project solves that you actually care about, you're not going to be you're not going to have the stamina, the emotional motivational stamina to finish that project. And that's just the truth of the matter. Unless you're working with a team of people that can carry that for you. It's different. So the last part of this, how do you actually build? How do you actually motivate yourself to build? How do you actually get to this point of building, right? Um, because that's what we're here for. We don't need to get all woo woo with all the other stuff, right? How do you actually build? How do you build this thing? Operational loop that I advise you to keep in mind. Define a goal. It can be tiny, right? So you have your project in mind. All right. Define a goal. You can get ChatGPT Claude to kind of audit the foundation of the project, the specs that you've set up for the project. This is not build build my God mode app. This is uh, take input, display output, right? That's tiny goals, right? Objective goals, right? So we define our goals. We break it into steps. This would take UI, logic, data, deployment, right? Easy. And use tools. Use tools aggressively, right? AI, Claude, ChatGPT for scaffolding, debugging. Get the computer to do what the computer's good at, right? Do I know what the, you know, 1,000 lines of error code mean in my terminal? No. Can I copy and paste that and throw it into Claude? Totally, right? Like it's gonna help. Um, we forget about the documentation of code so much. Python documentation exists, right? Like Rust documentation exists. All the frameworks, the APIs you're using, there's documentation for it. Documentation for specifics. Um, and then if you want to get even more specific, console logs for visibility to yourself, right? That gives you context of what you're working on. Take it out of this realm of like vibe coding too close to the sun and losing context of what you're working on, right? Test driven development. Test constantly. Um, does it work? If not, isolate the failure. Um, and then something that I'm trying to get this class into that I feel is a hard sell, but this one, ship early. Ship early. You're going to ship early. We're going to ship in this class on Thursdays, regardless of if the thing's finished, right? We deploy. We deploy on Thursdays, right? Why do we ship early? Even if it's ugly, even if it's incomplete, because coding is an art of infinite maintenance, right? The thing's never going to be finished, right? Do you think that like all of these albums that your favorite musicians come out with, do you think that the artists themselves look at the finished album and go, this is 100% complete. I am not touching it anymore. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be taken out. No, 0%. I've never met an artist who feels that way about an album that they worked on personally, right? We, as listeners, don't know that. We listen to a full album all the way through and we're like, dang, that's hit after hit after hit. But like as artists, as creative coders, um it's never going to be finished. And if you're not a creative coder, you're like, I'm robot, I code, like I am not creative. I'm a staunch anti-creative coder. I only code systems. um Guess what? You also suffer from the same plague that the creatives do in the thing never being finished, because you're going to be a perfectionist about it. Because until you have that user base, until the thing is scalable, until everything's coming back optimized perfectly, you're not going to know, you know? And also, all the frameworks you're using, what happens when they update? Oh, you're completely happy with your code. Oh, well, PHP just dropped a new version because there's vulnerabilities in the version that you're using, and now all your users' data is exploited, right? So it's like, no, I feel like ship early, get the thing out there, maintain it, you know, and iterate, iterate, add one feature at a time, one feature at a time. That's how these things get built, right? You're not writing code. I mean, you are writing code, but more so you're like, we're going back to sort of the computer. You're a computer scientist. You're a software engineer, right? You're running experiments. Does this feature work? Does this thing work? Do my users like this? Within reason, right? So think about your project. We're going back to what we're working on here. Personal projects. What's the smallest version of your idea that works? What's the next single step And where are you currently stuck, right? So, uh, yeah, it just goes back to the basic sort of what I've been saying this entire class. When we think about learning to code, right? We want to watch the tutorial. We want to do the passive learning first. I want to get us out of that mindset, right? The fastest way to learn to code is to build things. The fastest way to learn to code is to ship things. The fastest way to learn to code is to get stuck with your projects. Resolve those stuck points repeatedly. Build, get stuck, deploy, resolve. Build, get stuck, resolve, deploy. Like, do that. You do that 1,000 times, you'll still not have learned to code as much as you want to, right? It's there's gonna be a day where you're eventually like, all right, I finally get it. I feel like, but it doesn't come without the stuck feeling, the getting the project out the door that doesn't feel completely finished, right? Um, so if you don't like another thing that I've noticed with this class, when we don't have agency over what we build, we're gonna lose motivation, right? That's why I try to invoke uh the projects that you want to be working on, right? So have your personal project. I want you to pick your own problem space. I want you to choose your tools within reason, right? I want you to define your scope. I know that too much freedom with this, especially when we're learning and we don't know what path to go down, that's like a recipe for analysis paralysis, right? Build anything, but go back to the specificity sort of mantra, right? You are building systems that transform inputs into outputs for a specific purpose, right? So build anything, but it must take an input and produce an output, right? So what are you choosing to build versus what is being chosen for you? If I removed sort of all constraints from any project that we've worked on as a group, what would you actually build, right? And it's not so much about becoming this like code like wizard. You're uh you know, you've gotten to the end of the skill trait. Um, I think that people sometimes think it's just about like getting good, technically proficient at something. Um, but it's more so like when we're good at coding, or when we've gotten to the point where we feel like we've mastered something, it's because you've been working at the edge of your ability. You've been working like right outside of where it feels comfortable. And you've had that continuous feedback. And you have to make that continuous feedback. It's hard to conjure from the external world. Like you have to remind yourself why you're pushing yourself, you know? Think about like going to the gym or going on a run or meeting a new person, going on a date or doing something outside of your comfort zone, speaking in front of an audience, right? Working at that edge of comfort, of discomfort, that's and having that continuous feedback, that's how we sort of get into this place where we're learning and we're getting good at coding, incremental difficulty feedback loops, right? So how I implement this in my personal coding practice is that I kind of force small shippable steps, right? um so force small shippable steps. Uh and then with uh with projects that I'm working on, I require visible outputs. You know, a lot of the time when we're learning to code, we're building these like console applications that we're never going to share with people. If you build a website and you get your partner to test that website for you, you're going to know real quick where you went wrong, right? So visible outputs, UI, logs, deploying the actual thing, right? Um, build, fail, debug, refine. And sorry, I'm gonna mute this real quick. Um, so and purpose with your project. All right, this is the last note because I'm gonna end this, right? If your project doesn't matter, your effort is gonna just drop, right? Um, tie your project to real world utility, right? Even the smallest of stakes are going to count, right? And that's like sometimes a good place to start, right? Like your own self development, that could also turn into your friends' self development, self management, right? Other coworkers, could be a local use app, a way to organize your um community farm or whatever, right? Your local community farm, right? Uh so that's why we made the resource finder, right? But then the scope became America. So it really quickly like goes from the scope can creep pretty intensely, right? Um, so who benefits if your project works, right? What would happen if your project didn't exist? Um, and then yeah, anyways, so think about we're at the end of class now. We're gonna work on a project this week. We'll come up with what that is tomorrow. But think about your personal projects, right? Um, did we choose what we're working on? Did we think about that during the class? Did we like come to a point where we're like, all right, this is the project I'm working on? Yes, no, maybe so, kind of, no. I think so. Closer to it. All right. All right. And yeah, think about what you're working on, the autonomy of the situation. Think about what's currently difficult for you, but doable. It's all doable with code, right? Um, think about the purpose. Who is this for? Think about your vulnerability in this process, right? What are you not showing? What do you feel like lacks transparency in this process because maybe you're like me and you suffer from a little bit of imposter syndrome where uh, when I get Claude to write up the code for me and I don't fully understand how it works, did I really write that code? Did I really build that application? You know? Um, and then think about like how courage applies to this situation, right? Because I feel like y'all are capable of it, right? What are you avoiding starting? For some of you, it's like not even deciding what the project is in the first place, right? We learn to code because we want to solve problems. What problem do you want to solve, right? Projects are the execution layer. Your application is the execution layer that makes whatever self-development, motivation, uh, I don't know, whatever else, the architecture of all the content that you're taking in, um, whatever like emotional operating structure you feel like you take part in, your application can be the execution layer that makes those things real, right? It makes you as a creative, it is your practice, right? So That is sorry. Sorry, that was it was Monday. It was Monday. We went off we did like a little bit of a TED talk on this, but there was some sharing. I hope we got closer to figuring out what our personal projects are. And tomorrow we're actually gonna touch some code. So thanks for coming into class. Um we had more people here today than we usually do. So that's cool. If anybody has any questions, uh, comments, concerns, we'll do a little Q&A now and close things off. We'll round it off at the half hour. Um, and please, if you're interested in getting your name on the the resource app as a contributor, I implore you to check out the what is the GitHub for this? Oh, that's definitely not right. github.com/brnico/resource. All you have to do is fork it and you'll be a contributor, but it'd be nice if you actually made an issue or pull request. And we do have a current issue where the zip code searches result in server crash on production. If you're having an issue with the environment variables not being pulled in correctly, that's a great problem to figure out on your own. First of all, it's not. Somebody says I obviously barely know what I'm doing, but you've made participating in this class very accessible. Uh, it's not obvious. No one knows the internal struggles that like when I come to class and I'm like, oh, I have no idea how to code this thing, and I'm like gonna go in front of people and try to explain it to the best of my ability. We just do, you know? Like, we'll figure it out. We'll thread the needle on our own insecurities, right? Um, but yeah,
Fork it or just play around and create issues if something breaks or if something's not working.
I think that's, what is life, right? That's where we get like to the existential the existential part of it. When we're maintaining a code base, it does very much feel like, are we making issues to just like stress test the thing we built? Um, are we like actively optimizing the thing? Uh, and obviously we'd prefer to do things that are logical and feature builds that make sense and enhance the point of the experience, the output that we're trying to provide. Um, but sometimes we code things to code things. Sometimes we build the feature that nobody uses because it feels good to create things, right? Um, and that's perfectly okay. Uh, it is really fun building things with y'all, though. I think that if you are currently struggling with like coming up with a personal project to work on, take the group project as your personal project. Fork the group project. We now have, I think, like 10 group projects that we've worked on. Go and look at bugs for some of those early projects. They're full of them. They're full of bugs and they need maintenance. And some of the applications, heads up, we didn't really even get to work, right? We say we shipped them, but did we really ship them, right? Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. So also, all right, this is a good point. Project driven mania. This is something that Liz talks about. Um, with the agentic SDLC class because like a lot of the times when we're introduced to agents, people that have been working on projects, the old timey way of actually writing your own code, all of a sudden being able to just like rapidly like shoot projects out. I'm gonna build this thing in this hour. I'm building a budget tracker at 10 a.m. and then at 11 a.m. I'm gonna put out a chat system for my favorite RPG, and then at 12 I'm building a life planner. It's like hone it in, breathe. You know, just because you can build faster doesn't mean you should avoid going to sleep and eating. Like, you still need to take care of your body. You still need to take your dog on a walk. You still need to cook dinner for the family. Like do the things. And then also, like, there is something to be said about, like, I've solved issues that I've had in systems architecture. I've solved issues that I've had with coding while I'm doing dishes, right? I'm like, huh, oh, that's how this. And then you go back and, wash your hands and you fix the thing. I've solved things in my dreams, right? This is true story, and this is where we get to, like, can of worms. People are going to start talking about their dreams, but I've, like, literally dreamt that somebody's come up to me and told me the fix for a line of code that I was struggling with the day before, right? So sleep, because you might meet somebody in your dreams who helps you finish the project that you're working on. Yeah, or rubber ducky it. Rubber duckying is good. So rubber duckying is just talking it out, right? Um, I've been using Claude as a rubber ducky can work too. Using a friend as a rubber ducky, right? A friend that's interested in code. Um, yeah. Anyways, great job today, class. Great job. Learn to code. We're gonna work on something this week. I don't know. Think about maybe a project you want to work on as a group this week, or not. Um, Figure out the personal project though. I really want y'all to each and every one of you to have a personal project that you're working on. Um, y'all have been great. I have been Neek, and this has been Monday. April 6th, Learn to Code. I will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific. Code something today, won't you?